네, 그럼 3일차 이제 일정
Then
바로
we're going
시작하도록
to start the
하겠습니다.
fifth
지금부터
session.
제31회
From now on,
국제철도
we're going to
안전협의회 저희
start
마지막 세션
the last
국제협력에
session
대한 주제
under
발표와
the
토론을
title
이어가도록
of
하겠습니다.
International
이번 세션 역시
Cooperation.
다양한 발표와
In this
토론이 함께할
session, we have
예정이니까
prepared
계속해서
various
관심 가져주시고
presentations
함께해
and
주시길
we have
부탁드리겠습니다.
discussion session
자, 마지막
prepared.
세션 이제 좌장을 맡아주실 분을
I
또
would like to
소개를
introduce to you
해드려야겠지요.
the
이번
moderator of
세션의
the session.
좌장으로는요,
The
국토교통부
moderator is Mr.
조성균
Jo
철도운행
Song-yoon, the Director of
안전과장님께서
Railway Traffic
좌장을
Safety Division
맡아주시겠습니다.
at
자,
the
그럼
Ministry of
지금부터
Land
마이크를
Infrastructure
우리
and Transport.
좌장분께
I would
넘겨드리도록
like to hand
하겠습니다.
over the microphone to the moderator.
먼저 한국어로 인사드리겠습니다.
First of all, I would like to greet all of you. Thank you for your introduction.
지금부터
I am
제
조성윤.
발언은
From now
영어로
on,
진행을 하도록
I'm going to
하겠습니다.
speak in English.
Thank you very much for inviting me, for taking this opportunity to take care of this section named International Cooperation. First of all, let me introduce myself. I am Director of Railway Safety, Traffic Safety Division of Ministry of Land Infrastructure and Transportation of the Republic of Korea. Before developing the more specific contents, let me again introduce my background to explain why I choose English as a language for this moderating. I spent 4 years in the United States to get my master's degree and PhD degree, and I worked for 3 years in OECD in Paris, and also I was chaired. I had been chaired for 2 years of a transportation working group of APEC. Therefore, English speaking is more convenient for me to allow me for more flexibility and also capacity to deliver my meaning more directly to the international audience. So just excuse me for saying English for moderating this section, and but it doesn't mean that I'm not proud of my Korean language. I'm very proud of my language, mother tongue language, because Korean is very, very efficient, and also Korean uses alphabet like other representative Western languages. Therefore, it is very efficient and give more flexibility to the speakers and also listeners. And also, my personal belief is language communication is not a matter of nationality. Language communication is more like individual matter. Think about the family communication in your home, the communication between your parents and your children and you. Is there any problem? Probably not, because there is a generation gap. Therefore, the language communication is more like individual, like a culture and an attitude. And therefore, I just decided I had better choose English for this conference, and also using English give the international audience more direct meaning for this for this section, and also this I am also responsible for the supervising and overseeing and over part of this event from the government sector. Of course, the Mr. Chanu Park is a representative from Korea of a core group of IRSC, and I am really thank him for his servicing. But I just want to emphasize my role as organizer in government sectors. The meaning, the core theme penetrating this section is international cooperation. For what? That's my design goal. For what we should collaborate for transportation safety, the enforcing more safety technology in domestic safety, or we have to deal with trade-off between safety issue and the other important issue like international trade or economic activity. Under this theme, we carefully chose five presentation representing each point of thinking. Now, sorry for a long explanation of the background, and now I will introduce the first presenter team. The team is comprised of Madame Camille Leger, Regulation and Legal Officers, and Monsieur François Roumec, the European Project Manager from the French National Railway Safety Authority. And this title is Cooperation Agreements between National Safety Authorities in Europe. I'm not sure if they are online right now, or is it okay to let them start their presentation?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. Give them a big applaud. And please take the floor, the first presentation team. Thank you. Please take the floor.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm François Roumec, European Project Manager at EPSF, the French National Safety Authority for Railways. I give the floor to Camille.
Hello, my name is Camille. I'm one of EPSF legal advisors.
So first, we would like to thank you, the IRC committee, to let us the opportunity to speak about international cooperation today. We are very proud to present cooperation agreements between national safety authorities in Europe. In this section of international cooperation, we will present you an issue we have between member states in Europe. The idea is to facilitate cross-border traffic between member states in the context of the implementation of a new European regulation. So first, we will explain to you what is a cross-border area. It is a European concept. We are going to explain to you in order to explain why we do need international cooperation between member states. Then we will present all the regulation, national regulation and European regulation regarding this topic. Then we will show you the instrument we use for this international cooperation, meaning the cooperation agreements, and we will summarize all of wording today in the conclusion. So first, what is a cross-border area? Just after this slide, I will show you a scheme, but first, let me explain to you in main what is it. In the regulation, the cross-border area is a section of line which is located on the national territories and delimited by what we call cross-border station. It is the main station close to the border. And those river junctions in European and national regulation is a place where we have, let's say, a lot of traffic and specific traffic for these cross-border areas. On this scheme, you can see a little bit more precisely what we call a cross-border area. And we took an example, you will see all along the presentation, we took an example with Italy. Our colleagues are with Italy, that we signed the first agreement with Italy, and we will explain with this example the issue we encountered. But right now, I give the floor to Camille to explain more precisely what is a cross-border area.
I stay on this slide to explain the next slide. So the cross-border areas are intricate area because we have to articulate different elements on this area. At first, we have take a regulation into the account. We have different regulation, European regulation. In fact, it's the same regulation on each side of the state border. And we have the national regulations, named national rules in each territory, on the French national rules on the French territory, and Italian national rules on the Italian territory. We have to consider different limits to determine what is a cross-border area and define the relevant border station. To define this relevant cross-border station is not the first cross-border station, it's the relevant. So we consider the type of traffic. It's different if it's freight traffic or passenger traffic. We take into account operational elements and technical elements. And when we define a cross-border station and cross-border area, we consider needs and different interests according to actor, because many actors operate on the cross-border area, like railway undertaking, infrastructure manager, European Union, member states, and us, national safety authorities. So I extend this slide with the scheme. Recently, since 2019, the European regulation named Fourth Railway Package has offered a modernized instrument which should guarantee safety and interoperability and European in Europe and in particular European cross-border area. These instruments are single safety certificate, SSC, for railway undertakings, authorizing them to access the railway network. The safety authorization, SA, for infrastructure managers, authorizing them to operate, maintain, and renew the railway infrastructures. And authorization to put on the market, APOM, for rolling stock, everything it's in the title. Each member state implements this instrument through their national safety authorities, like us, EPSF. We authorize and supervise actors and implement European and national regulation. So we use these new instruments on the cross-border area because the new regulation offer us a particular system and modernized system process. For example, the SSC for Railway UK and APOM is an extraterritorial authorization when French NSA us, delivered this authorization, the railway undertaking can operate until the Italian cross-border station without other authorization. So it's very specified. So we can they can operate on the foreign territory without other authorization. We have to need just opinion of Italian NSA to do that. The exception is SA for infrastructure manager. It's only territorial authorization, but we need to cooperate with Italian NSA to deliver an relevant authorization. So, NSA goal for cross-border area is guarantee safety and interoperability, facilitate trade and traffic for railway operators, and simplify administrative procedure for this authorization for applicants and national authorities, and identify and characterize officially cross-border stations.
That now you understand what are the cross-border areas and all the issue we encountered with EU regulation and national regulation. We had to find a solution in order to implement this international cooperation. We choose to use a tool called cooperation agreement. It's such a thing as a contract, classical contract between two parties, and in this case, between two NSAs. So the EU regulation enabled to do so. So we choose this tool and to have a cooperation agreement with each neighboring state with France. We had like we needed such as 2 years to find a frame, and EPSF is a pioneer in Europe regarding those cooperation agreement, and we are implementing this new tool in the following months between all our neighbors. So what is a cooperation agreement? On a legal point of view, we split this agreement between what we call a general agreement. It will be like the common parts of the agreement, and with technical appendixes. In the general agreement, it's looking like a contract where you find very generic articles such as the background, the legal basis, very important because it's like Camille said, it's very intricate and complicated. And as well, you find the scope and the description of the topics and anything you will find in the technical appendixes. You have to understand that this general agreement is something like an obligation of cooperation between two parties in order to facilitate and implement all the regulation. The first appendix, we call Appendix 1 cross-border definition, is very important. This is the place where you can find the precise limit of the cross-border station. As you can see, a cross-border area is a section of line between two cross-border stations, but it's not that easy because cross-border stations are very complicated. It could be a very complex station with a lot of what we call yard, freight yard, passenger yard, technical yard, etc. So we have to define this section in order to see what is allowed on the French territory, for instance, with a neighboring authorization. In the Appendix 2, called APOM, authorization to put on the market for the vehicle and type of vehicle, you will find all the procedure in order to facilitate this traffic. Like we said, the authorization coming from another country will be valid on the French territory, but we need to implement process in order to do so. So this appendix will define all the process. Appendix 3, the same for RUs, for railway undertaking, what we call SSC, Single Safety Certificate in Europe. It will be the same principle. Appendix 4, regarding safety authorization. Here we are talking about authorization of IMs, infrastructure manager. It's a little bit different. Like you saw in the scheme before, the safety authorization is not valid after the border. You will have an authorization on each part of the border. But in many times, we will talk about the same infrastructure and the same infrastructure manager. You have to imagine that between two countries, you can have such a thing as a tunnel, for instance. We have a railway tunnel between France and UK, France and Spain, France and Italy, etc. And regarding those infrastructure, we have one IM with two authorizations. So this appendix is about simplify the process in each part of the border. And finally, Appendix 5 is about supervision. We authorize entities, and then we need to supervise those entities. So this is as well an appendix regarding how we can simplify our procedure between two states. So let's have a state of play between France and the neighboring country and the neighboring NSA. You have to know that between France and the neighbor, we did, I think, a great job between all those member states in order to implement this new international cooperation. And you have to know that we have a lot of demand from the sector in order to implement those new regulations, because we have a lot of cross-border traffic. Let's take as an example the first one, Italy. Why Italy? Because we signed, this is the first cooperation agreement we signed with another EU member state. So with Italy, we signed the general agreement and 2 appendixes, and we have still to sign 3 other appendices, as you can see on the scheme. As a second example, let's take Spain. With Spain, everything is all ready to be signed, almost. There is a very specific procedure for signature between those 2 countries, so we still need time, but I hope beginning of 2022, the cooperation agreement will be implemented. You have to know with Spain, we have 4 cross-border section, cross-border area, and with Italy, we have 3 cross-border area. Then let's take the example of Belgium and Luxembourg. Belgium and Luxembourg, we have around 10 cross-border areas, and the work is going well. We are almost ready to sign with Luxembourg, and I hope with Belgium we will sign beginning of 2022. With Germany, we have around, I think, 7 or 8 cross-border area. And we are as well going well with Germany, and we are about to sign a cross-border agreement with Germany. We have then 2 specific countries, Switzerland and United Kingdom. Switzerland is what we call a third country. It's not a member state, but regarding a railway sector, they will implement EU regulation. So we have a specific relationship with Switzerland, and we will implement a cooperation agreement quite close to a member state agreement. And it's still in progress. We have to know we have 7 cross-border areas with Switzerland, and we have a lot of traffic with Switzerland, mainly passenger traffic. And it will be very, very important to sign as well this agreement to facilitate the cross-border traffic. And to finish this state of play, let's take the final example of the United Kingdom. United Kingdom is no longer a member of EU. It's a third country, but we have a very important infrastructure with United Kingdom called the Channel Tunnel. We have a very high traffic, freight and passenger traffic. And we decided to implement as well a cooperation agreement with this entity, because it's very important to maintain the traffic and to maintain safety and interoperability in the tunnel. So we implemented a specific agreement with United Kingdom. So as you can see on the map, we have to sign still 5 other agreements, and I hope it will be done in the beginning of 2022.
To conclude, NSA cooperation agreements implement cross railway package on the cross-border area. Cooperation agreement facilitates administrative process, clarification of the limits of cross-border area, and reinforce of cooperation in terms of supervision. But this instrument take time to put in place, but we are now coming to fruition thanks to the will and excellent work of the NSAs. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, all of you. I hope it was clear for you. I think there is a Q&A section right after all the presentation. Don't hesitate to ask all the questions you want. And as well, after the meeting, the IRC committee can give the contact of Camille and I. If you have any question after this presentation and this event, don't hesitate to contact us. It's 9:24 in France. I think we are right on time, so we give you back the floor. Have a nice day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your very informative and laborious presentation. And to me, your presentation is very impressive. It explained very successful and monumental history and a story of the international cooperation. And this cooperation stems from the agony about economy. So therefore, if our economic activity are restricted into the domestic land, we don't need to worry about those kind of things. But today, the trade means international trade. We need to consider how to modify our product or service to export them into the adjacent foreign country. But the problem is, even though we are adjacent, the domestic regulation is really different. But to the governmental body, being equipped with all the domestic regulation seems to be the completion of safety. But due to the regulation, if we cannot buy some better product and service from foreign country, or we cannot sell our services to the foreign country, then we have to find out the solution. And the finding the solution is not easy, because I was in the middle of the big negotiation for trade. For example, free trade agreement between Korea and United States and Korea and European Union. Every moment was painful. Of course, all of the countries are pursuing the same goal, mutual benefits. The problem is there is big differences in domestic regulations. This presentation deals with the difference in infrastructural management. It can be applied to many other things. For example, road transportation, right? And the country A is very big, very wide, and because of their fast road transportation, their safety problem is passenger fatality. However, country B, the problem is the pedestrian fatality. Because the country is very small and there are many buildings, and it's a kind of a mixture of like a network of roads, very small road, like the vessels, like veins, small road, and many kind of buildings. In this case, the safety standard for motor vehicle should be different. For example, the country A's motor vehicle should have very strong body, because strong body can protect the passengers when big collision. But the problem happens in country B. The motor vehicle in country B should have more soft, less rough, not rigid body, because that soft body can protect pedestrian when collision against the pedestrian. Now, but the problem is country A really wants export their vehicle into the country B. Then from this point, there will be negotiation. Okay. Let me give you some alternatives. How about lower the speed limit in country B? If you lower the speed limit by 10 kilometers per hour, it can reduce more than 50% of damage, physical damage, when pedestrian accidents. Then the headquarters for the negotiation send a message to our ministry. Okay, the Ministry of Transportation, what is your plan to lower your speed limit in urban area? Then we can say maybe 2 years. In 2 years, can I ask if you make the time earlier than the plan, something like that? And all the procedure are very complicated and sometimes very painful, because the changing and modifying the domestic regulation needs many longer procedures than everyone thinks. But European Union with the French authority are doing those job very well. That is one of the examples. How could we adapt ourselves confronting the trade-off issues between safety and economic flows, economic activities. Therefore, at this point, all one need to do first stage needs to do very rigorous researches. If we omit or if we eliminate this part of safety, then how will we get more damage and how we will get more benefit economically? Okay, then can we transform those two values into the one indicator for comparison? That is a BC analysis. And the BC analysis should be done very integrated way. That's why I call it is very difficult, and I call the achievement shown in the first presentation is really monumental and historical success. I'm very happy to hear the presentation. Thank you again. And we will develop more detailed discussion in the panel discussion part. Now I will introduce the second presenter. Sorry, it's a little bit clumsy. Second presenter is Dr. Shin-Duk Ho, department leader from the Korea Railroad Research Institute. His title is Technical Standards of Domestic Railcar Parts, Advancement of the Standards and International Cooperation Plan. Please give him a big applause and please take the floor, Dr. Shin.
Thank you for your introduction. I am Shin-Duk Ho from KRRI. Let me start my presentation. I'm going to make a presentation on International Cooperation Plan for Korea Railways Technical Regulations and Standards. KRRI's Railway Test and Certification Division was appointed by MOLET as the organization to conduct management and type approval inspection. And as the ISO IEC certified institution, we're performing SA certification on government-funded projects. First of all, I'm going to explain about EU's harmonized standards and regulations, and national standards are being applied with regional and international standardization. A representative example is EU's TSI system, and North Korea, China, and Russia have joined OSJD. I'll show you an overview of the OSJD trend as well. International standards on railway safety include EU CSM, and we have similar system in Korea. I'll explain about such systems. And regarding the conformity assessment, I am going to explain about the Korea Railways Conformity Assessment and International Cooperation Status. New approach helps us unification of standards and qualification management of assessment bodies so that the result of evaluation can be accepted by anywhere. And lastly, in the midst of changes in our environment, such as the impact from the pandemic, and advanced technology applications in railways, we need cross-border cooperation. I'm going to explain about that in the last part of my presentation. First of all, I'm going to show you the interoperability and railway safety management between countries. With the legal amendment of the EU's fourth railway package, the EU requires by law to disclose technical standards on infrastructure, rolling stock, signal communication, and energy. and it emphasizes that it is mandatory to comply with RAMS standards. And the Railway Safety Act requires safety management based on risk assessments such as CSM and CSI. Korea hopes to connect the railway to that of North Korea, China, and Russia, which joined OSJD. OSJD also requires technical standards for passenger trains and cargo trains. They're also advancing the technical standards level to that of EU and making efforts to allow cross-acceptance of certification among member countries. And Korean Railway adopted EN 50126 international standards in the train control sector and made it mandatory for CAB, or Conformity Assessment Body, to issue test and inspection report and certification under the Railway Construction Act so that we can connect our railway across wider continents in the future. However, EN, the foundation of IEC 62278, is being continuously amended, which may lead to amendment of international standards. So including KRRI, Korean cabs are trying to renew their assessment qualifications. Devices such as signaling systems can cause train crash, derailment, and casualty if they malfunction. So SIL certification is the mandatory thing we need to acquire under Korean railway industry. Products with SIL certificate are being reviewed in the purchase process and in the independent safety assessment process to check if the systems correspond to the certificate. In this process, we're trying to make this process more efficient by promoting mutual acceptance of certificates among certification bodies. Especially in the case of Korea Railway, main systems such as train control systems follow the international standards such as IEC 62278 RAMS process, 62279 for software, and so on. This is required by law. I'll briefly have a look at the international standards trend. Railway-related standards are being actively established and amended at ISO's TC 269 and IEC TC 9. So Korea Railway, led by KRRI, is participating in the TC Technical Committee of each standardization committee. Compared to the EU standards, Korea is operating various standards that are classified into in-house standards, national standards, and international standards. Regarding the main standards related to railway safety management, you can see here the structure of standards in Korea, such as RAMS field. So far, Korea has not operated cross-border trains, but from now on, we are preparing for potential cross-border line operation by achieving conformity to national, regional, and international standards. In order to promote wider adoption of Korean railway technologies overseas, we're making efforts for international standardization. As explained before, Korean railway standards include Korea Industry Standards, KS, which manages the standards of system engineering test method. Also, we have KRS, that is for facilities and equipment of rolling stocks. In the future, the KRS standards for equipment specification will be adjusted as the in-house standards of stakeholders, including the National Railway Authority and KORAIL. The KRS standards for other items, except the equipment, will be integrated to KS in the future. As of now, Korea's conformance rate to the 110 IEC TC9 international standards is 39%. And in the case of technical standards for rolling stocks, we plan to increase the conformance rate from 57% from 2021 to 90% by 2026 compared to the EU TSI, so that we can build a foundation to operate cross-border railways and promote wider adoption of our technologies. Korea Railways commercialized LTER for the first time in the world, and for this we conducted international standardization activities, and we have the qualification as an international certification body for the standard. Based on this experience, we'd like to cooperate with interested CABs to share our LTER experience and apply AI technology to the safety evaluation. Next is the Korea Railways inspection process. Our process is similar to EU TSI, but our type approval inspection process is governed by the Railway Safety Act. And our technical standards and processes focus on safety. In terms of architecture, the process owner is MOLIT, Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport of Korea. As notified by MOLIT, those who want to use the products or cars that are subject to the technical standards of railway supplies and rolling stocks in Korea should apply for the type approval inspection to MOLIT. MOLIT receives the application and orders the consigned inspection institution like KRRI and KOSA to perform inspection. First of all, manufacturer should receive the inspection report from the 17025 institution under the testing conditions and requirements according to the technical standards. And as for the inspection requirement, if you submit the report of 17020 institution that can inspect the products under the conditions and requirements that are the same as the relevant technical standards requirements, then the report can be accepted by the inspection institution. If the technical standards are satisfied, then the inspection body submits the inspection report to MOLIT, and MOLIT checks the report and makes the final decision. As for rolling stocks, the inspection is made in a similar way. Once you secure the type approval certificate for rolling stocks, then KOSA performs a separate verification of facilities and submit the report to MOLIT. So the final approval is made by MOLIT. After opening the railway, safety management is conducted according to the Railway Safety Act through the SMS of each railway operator. Besides type approval, we have continuously benchmarked the EU Safety Act, and in the RFP, we include the duties to comply with RAM standards. Accordingly, the products with sales certificate should comply with the safety-related application condition, renew the GA certificate upon improvement of the product, and receive evaluation on their compliance with safety rules of the software that is applied to the site. Korea has abundant IT technologies which are accelerating the digitalization of railway. Especially for the LTAR that we commercialized for the first time in the world, we're performing conformity assessments similar to EU's RSC, and the Korean Train Control System, KTCS, is also receiving performance verification that includes the safety level similar to ETCS's EIC. In addition, KRRI is leading the application of IEC 62278 to hydrogen technology and AI by developing and studying hazard logs and essential safety measures. Projects that are composed of products with sales certificates undergo evaluation of safety according to RAM's international standards. KRRI especially is the only 17065 institution regarding the RAM's international standards, and we are competing and at the same time cooperating with EU CABs that are operating in Korea. And Korean Railways conformity assessment system has been internationalized, and Korean offices of EU CAB are being registered as 17020 inspection bodies for RAM's international standards in Korea, which is a positive phenomenon of internationalization. KRRI has signed a common evaluation and mutual acceptance agreement with the UK's Ricardo Rail and Norway's DNB. The mark below is the one marked on the KRRI certificate. Now, we have Korean 17069 NAP and KRRI's certification marks, as well as IAF MLA mark, which are all enhancing our international credibility. In the railway sector uses the conformity evaluation system the most in the area of safety, especially in order to reflect technological development in safety evaluation. We should make joint efforts to create and evaluate hazard logs and risk. First of all, we need to be able to use AI. So far, we assess the risks focusing on hazards, and the vast amount of accumulated data was processed to information, and the information was translated to statistics to manage safety. However, the main technologies of AI, such as machine learning and especially deep learning, requires data that precedes information. But so far, such data has not been properly managed. And once we apply AI, we need ethical verification about the judgment made by AI, which requires a different approach from the existing software's V&V. Lastly, it is very important to conduct workers' safety, and new threats have appeared, such as hydrogen, hypertube, and advancement of new technologies. Lastly, hypertube that Korea is now developing, high-speed travel, closed environment, and other advanced technologies that require different train operating environment have increasingly appeared. So we should think about what should be deleted and what should be added to the existing railway safety management, considering the advancement of advanced technologies and new threats. The IRSC 2021 is being held online due to COVID-19. Experts related to diseases expect that more severe diseases might appear more frequently from now on. So COVID-19, which is an airborne virus, we could share with you the Korean experience with controlling the risk of COVID-19. I think that experts need to cooperate with each other, sharing effective safety measures and experiences regarding COVID-19 risk control, so that we can enhance cost benefit. We also need to prepare safety measures tailored to the path of infection and further enhance our SMS system. Railway technologies are increasingly dependent on IT, and digitalization of railways have greatly contributed to better safety and lower cost. However, railway sector's increasing dependence on digitalization and communication have continuously increased the vulnerability in terms of cybersecurity. In addition, the heightening tensions and conflicts in the international community have increased risks. Recently, the EU established a standard of cybersecurity for railway sector. It requires that we should manage cybersecurity risk by life cycle, and in order to promote wider commercialization of railway technologies, we will have to conduct conformity assessment for this cybersecurity standard. We started developing the assessment schemes to include the standard in the 1706965 accreditation scope, and we are cooperating with overseas CABs as well. As explained before, advanced technologies are increasingly being applied to railway, and new threats are appearing, such as disease and cybersecurity. In order to effectively respond to these challenges, we should make a comprehensive effort to prepare legal systems, develop standards, and establish assessment bodies. As you see in the picture below, we should pursue safety and minimize financial loss caused by over-specification. Currently, UIC and EARA are developing many useful guidelines, and we learned a lot from the experience from other countries. I hope that we could have more opportunities such as IRSC to share information and promote the development of railway sector. That will make great contribution to reducing the gap in the level of safety management among countries. For the development of global railway safety, we need to share each other's experience with CSMRA, conformance evaluation and technology verification outcome more actively. In the Korean Railway, KOSA is managing the Railway Safety DB, and KRRI benchmarked the EU's NANDO website to be prepared to notify the product-specific conformity assessment results and failure rate of railway operation. This is the summary of my presentation. As risk-based safety management has become an international standard, we are now able to ensure rational safety in consideration of cost. So we should actively share and exchange each other's experience in legal systems, regulations, and standards of risk-based safety management. In order to ensure safety in the application of advanced technologies and to promote trade, we should reinforce mutual cooperation in the area of conformity assessment. Let's also conduct joint case studies and share information regarding the new threats of infectious diseases and cybersecurity. Thank you for your attention.
Wow. First of all, I have to say some excuse to my first presenter, the François Khumeg Camille, because we didn't give them big upload. But anyway, Dr. Shin, we happily gave him a big applaud for his informative presentation. And now I have to say, all the presentation material and opinion from Korean part have to be a private opinion. This is not a representative opinion from Korean government sector. I have to say this in view of disclaimer. Okay, so that is including my remarks for safety in the future. There's a lot of different kind of safety. And right now, if the first presentation is about the infrastructure view, this presentation is for the vehicle, the product, market product view. Korea separated the management into two parts. The first part is about infrastructure, and second part is operation of the train vehicle, and also type approval of safety standard for vehicle. Train vehicle is a key target of this presentation. But as I said before, the penetrating theme is very similar. Now, because we are confronting the international trade issue, we have to consider how to streamline the type approval procedure of the partner country. In the previous presentation, probably our ratio of standardization to the international or European standard is less than 50%. Probably we know that each safety standard has domestic part and international part. As for international part, we don't need to worry about too much because we are common, we can share the recognition. The problem happens in the domestic part. Therefore, I have a good train vehicle and I have to export the train vehicle to the Korea. But oh la la, there are several different aspects of the standard. And then I can just claim to Korean government that your technical regulation about the vehicle train is unnecessary, is a technical barrier. You need to lower down for facilitation of our trade between two countries, something like that. And then we can say, no, that is your misunderstanding. The domestic regulation is very, very inevitable to make secure or to make our safety secured. Then there is a point where the debate begins. Then I can say, do you have any proof? Then Korean government can say, okay, we have a proof. And reviewing the proof documents, I can say, this is not the result of quantitative, but not result of empirical data. That's why Dr. Shin frequently remarked about the necessity of data, like a big data. As the technological advancement, we need to analyze big data, but usually we don't have enough data than necessary. That is sometimes in view of science, we need data, but definitely for trade facilitation, we need data for analysis to streamline or to reduce our current safety standard. Each country should have a justification. The justification should come from evidence-based policy. Therefore, we have We means the government body have a responsibility to record each necessary data or information per procedure. There's a basic line. That's basic line. Sometimes we meet the situation where or when we lack of the capacity to analyze that kind of data. And also, even though we are saying safety standard is nothing but manufacturing standard. Yes, this is for making the product. Why do we make the product? Because we have to make beneficial economic flow in our market, targeting market. So we have to make our product favorable to, or that we can sell to the market. Then is what I want to say here is marketing should be first. For the marketing, every economic flow, including import and export, the train vehicle begins. Then after that, the customer or partner country will review this vehicle, the functionality or capability that this vehicle train provide is safely conducting. At that time, we have to make safety standard, but the safety standard is a result of the manufacturing. Therefore, as I said before, international cooperation should stem from the consideration of how to proceed or how to enter the foreign market or domestic market as the demand arises. That's why we insert his presentation in this section. To common sense, are there many problems? Because every country usually have minimum number of regulation, because every government always show the presidential promise as a promise of the deregulation. We deregulate the overall the market standard, but that is not so simple. For example, this is not today the situation of Korea, but for a long time ago, when Korea made some standards about our product, including motor vehicle or a train or any other construction product, we adopted many other different standards from foreign countries, including United States or Japan or Europe. Therefore, we have the resultantly Korean government had biggest quantity of the group of regulations. Therefore, right after moving the activity toward the free trade agreement era, the first job of a Korean government is deregulate to streamline all the safety standards into the international standard. Therefore, it's not easy problem, but definitely that goal should be what we are pursuing right now. And also, even though Dr. Sin's presentation is just extending the realm of standard international harmonization of the standard is our goal, but technically, realistically, it is not so simple. Think about that. If we adopt a certain country's product into our economy without skipping enough number of regulation approval in domestic procedure, what should be the assumption? We have to completely believe that the partner country's domestic regulation really the same to our country. Do we have that belief? I don't think so. Even though partly we recognize that there should be also same kind of belief. That means free trade or trade facilitation is only possible when the two partner countries are at very similar level economically, right? Deregulation is not just an omnipotent solution. It cannot be. Deregulation means or just harmonization into certain group of standardization, maybe give us more room to enter the market, but at the same time, we should give the same amount of the room to the partner countries' production units, corporations. We don't know the result yet. Therefore, market competitiveness between two countries or several countries should be in the very similar level, and those negotiations should be based on very careful market investigation. So this is, this is the execution from government part. That's why Dr. Sin's presentation said Korean government purpose is like securing safety rather than facilitating trade. But I have to say that that is the kind of result of a normal procedure in the government sector, right? And we will discuss more in detail in the panel discussion about these trade-offs between safety and safety and the economy in view of trade. And now I will introduce the third presentation. The presenter is Mr. Jesse Baker, General Manager of Innovation and Major Projects from Rail Industry Safety and Standards Board from Australia. Please give him a big applaud right now, and take the floor, Mr. Jesse Baker.
Wonderful. Appreciate the introduction. Thank you very much. It's hard, you ask people for applause. It's very difficult to hear if that's happening, of course, but I appreciate the introduction. Thank you. My name's Jesse Baker. I'm the General Manager of Innovation and Major Projects at Brisbane's Rail Industry Safety and Standards Board. It got me thinking, the topic of conversation for this section of IRSC, the international cooperation, I think it's particularly relevant given that we are all here together at an international conference. It's very encouraging. In fact, I was thinking about it earlier. This is my 6th IRSC, and I've had the pleasure of speaking at 5 of them. So I think if there's any more example required that people believe in the need for international cooperation, I think that's a tremendous demonstration. A little bit about RISB before I get into the main body of my presentation. We are the industry here in Australia. We are the industry's accredited standards development organisation. And of course, we've heard the previous speakers speak about the importance and relevance of standards. We refer to ourselves as the industry's partner in co-regulation. So here in Australia, we operate on what we call a co-regulatory framework. That essentially means that rail companies themselves are responsible for the safety of their operations. And then the regulator will come in to ensure that they are doing the things that they said they would do. And of course, to deliver safety, they employ things like standards and other products. And they're the sorts of products that we produce. So we're helping, we see ourselves in that equation as providing the things that the rail companies themselves use in order to be able to ensure and demonstrate the safety of their networks. We've got around 250 standards on offer. We provide training and advice, etc. We manage a risk model. In fact, we oversee several risk tools for our railway, again, with a view to making sure that our rail companies around Australia are well informed and they've got the tools they need to be able to provide safety. So we've got our ARM model, and I've spoken about that at previous conferences. We're very proud of that. ARM stands for the Australian Rail Risk Model. We manage on behalf of our industry our ALCAM, which is our level crossing assessment model. And we also manage for the industry our safety culture toolkit, which obviously helps industry organisations understand the culture of their own organisations to be able to measure and manage that. But our fundamental reason for existing is to drive harmonisation around our industry. And I'll talk a little bit more about interoperability as well. I enjoyed hearing a previous speaker talk about cooperation agreements. You might be surprised to hear how difficult it is here in Australia, even within one single country, to achieve interoperability. But the subject of my presentation is really about, are we prepared in Australia for the absolute expansion of our networks around the country? I'll set the scene for that. In Australia, we have a relatively small population by some international standards. There's about 25 million of us here in Australia, albeit on quite a large country. But and I have to give credit to our Bureau of Statistics here in Australia, the forecasts in Australia are that our population could anything up to double by the mid-2060s. Now, that's extraordinary. That means our two large cities, Melbourne and Sydney, will be within the neighbourhood of London in terms of population size today. That is really quite an extraordinary level of growth that could possibly come. Now, of course, there are other scenarios, but that's the upper limit projection for our population growth. And you think for a minute what that's going to do for our cities and our transport needs, our passenger demand and freight. In fact, you can see here in parallel with that, and again, I have to give credit here to Deloitte Access Economics Value of Rail Study Report, commissioned by our Australasian Railway Association here in Australia. And you can see quite clearly the projections for passenger demand on our networks, tracking pretty closely to the projections in population growth. No real surprises there. But again, the vast majority of that in those two large cities in Australia, in Melbourne and Sydney. But of course, when it comes to transport in Australia, I'm sure the rest of the world largely views Australia as a freight network. Certainly the amount of freight and heavy haul that we run around the country is significant. In fact, it's overwhelming. You can see here the sort of flows of freight around the country from our cities and from some of the more remote parts of Australia as well. Now, this isn't all rail, of course. This includes shipping and freight moved by air. But you can see here there's a significant amount of freight moved around the country in some quite complex patterns. Now, of course, as I said earlier, with increased population, there's going to be an increased demand on our transport networks, as per the previous slide. But as per this slide, there's going to be an increased freight demand as well. And all of this, I'd ask you to bear in mind, against a potential doubling of our population in the coming decades. And of course, we see a similar trend in the projections for our freight demand. You can see there the growth projected going into the next several years. No real surprises. The point I'm trying to hopefully get across here is that there is a significant increase projected for the usage and travel patterns of our freight and passenger services around the country. Now, that is matched by the plans for development of our railways around the country. Now, this diagram here, I'm sure you can see the upward trend of expenditure. Now, this diagram is a couple of years old, but you can see still that trend continuing. Now, the only reason it tapers off on towards the right-hand side of the diagram there is that there are projects that are in the concept stage that haven't yet got as far as planning and therefore costing, but we know that trend is going to continue, and you can see significant money being spent in developing railways. Each of those horizontal segments on those bars represents different projects that are planned around the country. You can see there the map of Australia. The passenger networks, you can see in every single state, there are significant plans for developing our railways around the country. There are some 155 billion Australian dollars planned to be spent on our railways over the coming decade. So what we see here is an expectation of population growth, an expectation of increased demand on our passenger networks and freight networks, and planned spending that goes into these infrastructure projects and procurement projects as well, going over into the coming decades. Now, we talked a minute ago about interoperability, and as I mentioned, it was interesting to hear about the cooperation agreements. Now, it might surprise you to learn that even in Australia, we have problems with interoperability, or indeed there are certain considerations that need to be respected to ensure we maintain interoperability. If you're unaware, Australia is divided up into states, and each of those states is governed independently. That drives sometimes differences in the way transport networks are developed. Within each of those states, there are separate infrastructure managers. They obviously manage their businesses as suits their businesses. So there is a real need for a coordinated effort to achieve interoperability across all that complexity between those different governments and different infrastructure managers. Now, I will say, of course, we are at least, that task is at least made a little bit easier by the fact that we all speak the same language, although perhaps that's questionable sometimes. But nevertheless, there is a task to make sure that these services can interoperate, to make sure that our railways, as they develop and as they expand together, that we can still meet those freight and passenger demands as they increase going into the future. In a moment, I'll talk to you a little bit about a nationally coordinated effort, and a significant part of that is about ensuring that we maintain these levels of interoperability. But of course, it's been a significant part of RISB's remit now for the whole of RISB's existence, in fact. And we've got multiple projects on that are geared towards encouraging and continuing interoperability. Now, the theme for this topic, of course, is international cooperation. And so we do look to Europe to learn lessons. We learn lessons from the TSIs, and we try and, where we can, sort of learn, not reinvent the wheel as we work through some of these interoperability issues. You can see we have an interoperability standard. We have one that focuses specifically on train protection and control, etc. We've commissioned at RISB various pieces of work that focus on how different control systems can work harmoniously together, or how they might be built into system overlays that can allow them to talk to each other. We have a piece of work on currently at the moment around understanding or trying to design a framework that allows governments and RIMs to talk effectively together, so that we can make sure that issues around interoperability are front and centre and considered at the front of the minds of decision makers. So there's a real emphasis coming from RISB on interoperability. It's a really sort of forward-looking and strategic focus area that's on our work plans at the moment. But it extends to sometimes quite simple things. We don't have a national rolling stock registration scheme around Australia. So that means individual rolling stock operators have to register and re-register and re-register their fleets as they want to traverse across those different jurisdictions and across those different RIMs that I showed on the diagram earlier. RIM is our collective term for infrastructure manager. The absence of such a system has meant that registering and re-registering those fleets is inefficient. It is problematic in terms of making sure the free and easy access to those different networks. There are different requirements from some of those different networks. So there is a real opportunity there for RISB. And in fact, we have a project on the books as we speak. In fact, it's just started to try and fill that gap, to try and create a register that sits in the middle and allows these different registration schemes from the different infrastructure managers to talk to each other. It's a really obvious and simple concept, but it's one that's been so problematic in our country. Now, the part of that complexity I mentioned earlier has been around the different jurisdictions, the state-based governments being independent of each other. But another complexity there is the fact that as railways first started here in Australia, they started mostly in major cities for all of those different jurisdictions, and they've grown up largely independently of each other, which has been fine up until recent decades when, of course, they've started to intersect with each other now. So you can completely understand how we've arrived, how we've got what we've got, but it's now meaning it's even more important for an organisation like RISB to try and create some of those more, encourage that harmonisation now that our networks are interacting more and more with each other. So we're really very excited about this rolling stock register. Now, I mentioned a moment ago a nationally coordinated effort which is seeking to try and prepare us and help guide decision-making as we build our networks to accommodate that increased demand for the future. This is the project I was thinking of, the National Rail Action Plan. It's coordinated by the National Transport Commission here in Australia, and it comprises all of the jurisdictions. There are representatives there from all of the state-based transport departments. RISB is interwoven throughout much of the activity that underpins the National Rail Action Plan. We've got our national regulator in the room, the Office of the National Rail Safety Regulator, of course. Our Australasian Railway Association is there. There is a real, a significant effort from all of the different major stakeholders involved. So it's really quite exciting time to be part of that coordinated effort with all of the key decision makers going right into governmental levels. So there's a real sense that as our railways develop, we've got the right people in the room at the right time with the right authority to be able to make these important decisions. And here's just a flavour of who's involved. Now, of course, this will be, our international audience won't recognise who all of these players are or these acronyms, but I can tell you that each of these organisations comes from one of the jurisdictions. They represent different agencies within the different jurisdictions, as well as our Commonwealth, our federal government. We've got representatives for representing strategic, future-focused governmental initiatives such as the National Faster Rail Agency. And as I mentioned, our major infrastructure manager here in Australia, our ARTC, and of course RISB, our regulator, ONRSR there. It really is an impressive cast of attendees, making sure no stakeholder is left out. And the National Rail Action Plan itself, it really spans three legs on the stool. The first is skills and labour. Now, with all the work that's happening, with all the infrastructure work that will be done, with all the procurement, that'll bring all the manufacturing that's going to be required within procurement of assets, etc. There's going to be a lot of skills required. We need a lot of talent to be able to meet that increased demand. There's concerns about whether we can resource that. That means there's thinking going on into how to make rail a more attractive career pathway for students. There's thinking going on around how we can attract talent internationally. And again, I refer back to the international cooperation theme. There's thinking going on around how we can reduce our reliance on that human resource, how automation can help to bridge the gap and solve some of those problems as well. There's talk of academies set up. There's talk of training packages, the competencies required for all of those different skills. So there's a real need to make sure that as this railway grows and develops, that we can resource all of that work. The second leg in the National Rail Action Plan is around common standards, and of course the two interrelate. The greater the harmonised systems, that the greater you can harmonise systems around the country, the more efficient that will be in terms of the skills and labour you need. There's an obvious interplay between these two things. The common standards work stream within the National Rail Action Plan is chaired by the RISB CEO Deb Spring, also one of the RSC core group members as well. Co-chaired, in fact, with another representative from one of our jurisdictions, government department here in Australia from Victoria. His name is Ben Filan. But RISB is obviously the right organisation to be driving a lot of the work that's going in that common standards area, being the rail industry's standards development organisation. And there's obvious benefits there. We can drive economies of scale through better standardisation. We can be smarter about the way we develop our railway, bearing in mind how much work there is going to be. And there are some benefits here in stimulating some of our local manufacturing capabilities as well. Good common standards will mean that we can meet a lot of the demand for those assets and those components locally with our own manufacturing capability. So there's a double benefit there for us. And the last leg on the stool of the National Rail Action Plan is interoperability. And I spoke a moment ago about all the work that RISB does to ensure that our networks are interoperable. But there's a significant amount of that needs to be driven from government level. And so having the governmental representatives in the National Rail Action Plan means that when it comes time to be making these decisions and when these investment decisions are being made, we've got the right people in the room, as I said earlier, to make sure that we can ensure interoperability going into the future. It's really, we sort of feel like we're in the sweet spot at the moment where up until now, we haven't had to put too much effort into interoperability. But if we leave it too much longer, we could find ourselves coming up with more and more complicated or more expensive solutions to interoperability. So if we make good decisions now, we feel like we're in that sweet spot where we can bring that coordinated effort to industry and make sure that we will be interoperable into the future. So hopefully that's given you a sense of where Australia's railways are developing and how we're attempting to meet that demand, how we're putting the plan in place to be able to meet that demand going into the future. And linking it back to the conference theme, how we're looking internationally to try and learn lessons from our partner railways around the world. I want to thank you for your attention, and I want to express my deep gratitude to our Korean hosts. Thank you very much for inviting me to present. Hopefully you found that informative, and happy to hang around to participate in the discussion and answer any questions.
Please give him a big applause. Thank you very much, Mr. Baker, for this very insightful material. Now, everybody knows why we put this material in this section. As Mr. Baker said, his material is about the domestic matter, but the core notion is very coincide with our international cooperation. Because Australia is very huge, is comprised of several regions, huge regions. Each region develops its domestic regulation for safety. But however, as the population grows and network increases, they need collaborate to facilitate economic flow, facilitate economic activities. Then they found there is some blockages in applying safety standard. This region safety standard does not comply with that region safety standard. We need collaborate to streamline and harmonize and to acquire interoperability. Right. That is the really same notion that we are considering about this section. For international trade, for international economic activities, we need to collaborate to streamline the regulation, especially responsible for safety. But however, that doesn't mean that we sacrifice safety. We need to keep the certain level of safety, but however, we need to discard unnecessary part of a regulation. Unnecessary means inefficient to compare to the cost and the benefit in maintaining the regulations, right? As for his presentation, I have more topic to discuss deeper, but we probably I had a better delay the time to the panel discussion about this overall trade-off between the safety regulation and the economic activity, and also synergy between the economy, infrastructure, and industrial development, something like that. Now we will turn to the fourth presenter. The first presenter is, Mr. Chris Chi Yuet Young, the senior engineer, and Mr. Kim Ching Chung, chief engineer from the government of Hong Kong Special Administrative Regions. Please give them a big applause and take the floor. Team from Hong Kong government.
Good evening, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Casey Zhang, Chief Engineer from the Railway Branch of Electrical and Mechanical Service Department, which is a regulatory body and law enforcement department. With regard to electricity, gas, lift and escalator, railway safety, and related E&M areas within the government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. It's my great pleasure to share with you here in this conference our presentation on challenges and opportunities in upholding railway safety in Hong Kong under COVID-19 pandemics. My colleague, Mr. Chris Young, will also join me later for the presentation. Our presentation will be divided into 3 parts, as shown in this slide. I shall give you a brief introduction of the regulation of railway safety in Hong Kong, then a brief touch on the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic and the challenges it brought to the work of railway regulator and operators. My colleagues will then share with you the opportunities under the pandemic for railway regulator and operators in continuing their work to uphold railway safety and the way forward under the new normal. As briefly introduced by my colleagues, Mr. Alan Chow and Ms. Cherry Hui, in their presentation given on the first day of this conference, the railway branch of EMSD is the railway safety regulator overseeing the safe operation of railway system in Hong Kong, including the metro system, heavy rail, light rail, and high-speed rail of MTR railway networks. Automated people mover at the Hong Kong International Airport, Hong Kong tramways, and the peak trams. The major regulatory work of the railway branch include ensuring the adoption of appropriate safety measures by railway operators, assessing and vetting new railway projects and major modifications of existing railway facilities, assessing and following up with operators on improvement measures in respect of railway safety, and investigating safety-related railway incidents. The outbreaks of COVID-19 since early 2020 has posed extraordinary challenges in almost every part of the world. Such public health crises impose serious limitations on the flow of people, materials, and equipment across regions and countries, and has deeply plagued Hong Kong's economy. Individual countries need to keep adjusting the intensity of their infection control measures in light of the circumstances, taking into account their respective economic and social needs to avoid spreading of such deadly disease. Unlike other countries which prepare to live with the virus, in order to maintain their economic viability and fulfillment of social needs. The government of the Hong Kong SAR works very hard to achieve sustained zero infection level through implementation of stringent anti-epidemic measures and incorporate disease prevention and control, as well as infection management into the new normal of the daily operation of the society. In response to the COVID-19 outbreak, the government, for the first time ever, imposed cross-boundary epidemic control together with a lot of social distancing measures, such as suspension of classes in schools, work from home arrangements for civil servants, etc., which mandate people wearing face masks in public areas. Temporary close down of high infection risk premises, including restaurants, bars, gym, etc., in February 2020, in accordance with the existing legal requirements, such as the Prevention and Control of Disease Ordinance, Chapter 599. Other key control measures under its containment strategy include testing, contact tracing using the Live Home Safe mobile apps, and sewage surveillance for testing untreated sewage for fragments of COVID-19 virus at sewage treatment plant to enable early detection in the event of localized outbreaks in the community, and provision of testing, quarantine, and isolation facility with a view to achieving early identification, early isolation, and early treatment of the infected. In order to effectively prevent spreading of the disease in the community, free territory-wide COVID-19 vaccination program is implemented for all Hong Kong residents on a voluntary basis. Up to now, over 4.3 million residents, that is about 64% of the population, have completed the vaccination by receiving 2 doses of vaccine. Economic activities in Hong Kong were hard hit by the pandemic, causing serious setback in business of different trades. Efforts in battling the crisis have inevitably put many economic activities almost to a standstill. In particular, periods of social distancing measures have posed exceptional difficult time on different industries in Hong Kong, including the railway industry. The pandemic not only hindered cooperation in railway industry across the group, but also present unprecedented challenges to railway regulators and operators in continuing their work. It has given rise to a new normal where the government and the railway industry have adopted more online tools and innovation and technology solutions for meetings, training, and the delivery of services to meet rising public expectations for greater convenience. This new normal has provided opportunities to the railway regulator and operators in Hong Kong in a number of areas to streamline their work for better and more efficient services. The challenges and opportunities faced by the railway industry in Hong Kong under such difficult time are summarized in the coming slides. Challenges. The first challenge is impact on the regulatory work. The progress of the railways branch regulatory work was adversely affected during the pandemic, as most of the civil servants were required to work from home and therefore could not attend site inspection to examine the condition of critical railway assets, to assure their safe operations, and to sample check operators' maintenance work to ensure the work was properly carried out. The work related to vetting and approval of operators' statutory submissions was inevitably delayed due to inadequate IT equipment and software for staff working at home, and the information network security requirement restricting access to confidential information for remote work outside EMSD office. Moreover, face-to-face meeting with stakeholders for discussion of project coordination, audit work, and other railway operational issues had to be cancelled to prevent cross-infection. All these created challenges in the planning of manpower to perform the said regulatory work according to the committed work schedules to safeguard safe operation of railways. The second one is limitation of people flow across country and regions. Stringent anti-epidemic measures were implemented around the world, which seriously restricted people traveling between countries, causing difficulties for our overseas consultant to come to Hong Kong to assist us in carrying out railway inspection work. And our appointed local consultant also need to go through rigorous COVID-19 tests and fulfill the mainland's anti-epidemic measures and quarantine requirement before allowing to cross the border for delivery of professional service on our behalf. Same challenges also apply to railway operators consultant, resulting in significant delay in delivery of professional service for enhancement of railway safety. The third one is interruption of global supply chains. Factories of equipment manufacturers in overseas were on lockdowns due to infected staff. Government stringent anti-epidemic measures and suspension of flight services to prevent spreading of the disease. This has resulted in serious interruption of global supply chains, leading to prolonged delay in delivery of critical spare part or material required for railway maintenance works. The fourth one is the interruption of international and regional collaborations. The global restriction to people traveling across country and business activity has severely limited professionals to attend international conference and business meeting to foster cooperation. In Hong Kong, the operation of the cross-border high-speed rail was suspended, and our face-to-face meetings with the railway regulator and operators in mainland were cancelled, thereby hindering mutual cooperation in the work on regulation of high-speed rail safety. The fifth one is setback in railway operators' business. The slowdown in social activities, job loss, and household income reduction have resulted in low consumption appetite, and people are reluctant to go out to avoid infection. Moreover, with cross-boundary restriction widely in place, inbound and outbound travel activities have almost come to a standstill. These have caused drastic drop in the number of railway passengers and setback in railway operators' business, which in turn generate financial pressure to operators in maintaining their railway assets to ensure safe train operations. Under the stringent anti-epidemic measures, it was a great challenge for operators to flexibly deploy sufficient manpower and equipment for maintaining train services under emergency situations. The sixth one is increasing needs for wider application of innovation and technology. It is the government policy to request bureaus and departments to perform smart regulation using more innovation and technology to enhance effectiveness and efficiency of regulatory services, and facilitate trades to deliver better services to the public, in particular under the pandemic. With a view to boosting up the public's confidence in using railway services under the pandemic and meeting the increasing public's expectation for higher railway safety, operators have adopted different I&T solutions to enhance the hygiene inside train compartments and implement predictive maintenance to prevent premature failures of critical equipment, leading to incidents. However, the lack of in-depth technical knowledge and limited research and development capability on the development of I&T solutions have limited the wider application by both railway regulators and operators. Regarding the opportunities brought by the COVID-19 to the work of railway regulator and operators in Hong Kong for upholding railway safety, I would like to pass the remaining time to my colleagues, Mr. Chris Young. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Casey. Good evening. I'm Chris Young. All of us have been devoting in tackling challenges under COVID-19 since last year. I'm going to share with you all some opportunities that are adopted to resolve the challenges. They are grouped into 4 categories. EMSD has formulated the business continuity plan for novel coronavirus infection, which set out EMSD's preparedness and response plan in case of an outbreak of COVID-19 in EMSD, so that different divisions of the department can respond according to the agreed and coordinated efforts with an aim to reducing the number of staff infected cases due to novel infection. Furthermore, the plan also serves as a tool for clear communication with senior management for reporting the latest situation relating to the COVID-19 issues. The plan includes emergency operation plan, staff deployment plan, office setting, personal protective equipment requirements, utilization of electronic communications, monitoring of railway operators' business continuity plans, emergency communication and reporting protocol. We have implemented enhanced measures to maintain regulatory services. It is our focus to help the trade maintain service continuity despite of COVID-19. From the onset of epidemic in early 2020, we met with railway operators to review their business continuity plans. Site audits were conducted to check the progress and effectiveness of implementing the operators' business continuity plans. We are confident that both regulatory service and the railway trade stands ready to serve the public well even if COVID-19 stays. Moreover, online platforms were developed to enable remote processing of operator submission by EMC staff under the work from home arrangement. The pandemic has driven us in enhancing communication using various online tools. All of us now get used to participate in local or international webinars, just like IRSC this year, which is more convenient than face-to-face conference, and encourage more participants to join. EMSD has widely adopted online meeting platforms, such as Zoom, to maintain social distancing. We also encourage document sharing through online platforms during regular auditing exercise. Some overseas consultants are not able to travel to Hong Kong due to suspension of transportation under the pandemic. Although it prevents our engagement of the overseas consultants who have previously worked together. This in turn increases opportunity for engaging local consultants or experts as alternatives for provision of professional services. Similarly, some overseas suppliers could not supply spare parts to the railway operators, and this drives the railway operators to identify alternative supply sources in the mainland to enhance feasibility of obtaining critical spares for maintenance works. EMSD is promoting wider adoption of INT solutions and accelerating digitization of regulatory services. EMSD enhanced collaboration with railway industry to develop various INT solutions. The INT solutions can allow the railway operators to implement predictive maintenance and reduce railway incidents. This can in turn reduce extensive manpower involvement in case of railway incident occur. The railway operators have been encouraged to invest more in adopting new technologies for monitoring real-time operating conditions of critical railway systems and triggering of alarms for carrying out maintenance works before equipment breakdown. One of the railway operators, MTRCL, has set up the data studio to facilitate its implementation of predictive maintenance by analyzing the real-time operating data collected from various IoT sensors installed in critical railway equipment for detection of potential defect at early stage to prevent occurrence of the incidents. The pandemic has transformed the world and given us insights into how to manage the challenges going forward. It has given rise to a new normal, where the government and the railway industry have embraced more online tools and INT solutions for meetings, training, and the delivery of services to meet the rising public expectation for greater convenience. This new normal is also an excellent opportunity for the government to use INT to streamline its work process to meet rising expectations from business and the public, and to lead by example so that the private sector will expedite its own R&D efforts. The pandemic has triggered enormous demand for R&D solutions in all walks of life. We hope this new normal will kickstart a snowball effect for further R&D development in Hong Kong. EMSD will continue to apply R&D in regulatory work and collaborate with railway operators to explore wider adoption of R&D solutions for enhancing railway safety. Good progress has been made in using R&D solutions to step up inspection and other preventive measures, such as the gold medal winning project in the International Exhibition of Invention of Geneva, the artificial intelligent nylon optical fiber sensing escalator comms, which features redesigned escalator comms made with a different material to avoid step dislocation due to small object trap. Meanwhile, an AI-based accident prevention system for escalators, which is being trialed at a MTL station to reduce escalator incidents caused by the passenger carrying bulky baggage or baby pumps. R&D can boost our incident prevention work and the culture of curing diseases before they arise, which not only enhance our work on the regulatory of railway safety, but also helping the community to fight against COVID-19 in the past 2 years. Apart from the railway safety, EMSD is also supporting the government in fighting COVID-19 pandemic by providing timely and effective technical support in response to the different needs of the government departments and proactively recommend application R&D solutions, enabling the departments to respond swiftly and continue to serve the community in a safe setting. Thank you. This is the end of our presentation today. We also take this chance to thank you, IRC, for inviting us to this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for your very challenging presentation, and your presentation gave us a very insightful message. Right, the COVID-19 is a global threat, and the COVID-19 has touched it, and is touching us painfully more than we thought. But as you said, we have opportunity also, and we opportunity and also but challenging. The problem is the trial is how to reimburse the damage due to the challenge by utilizing our opportunities. As you said, many IT technology and AI technology can replace contact human labor to non-contact computerized automation. And also we this notion just remind us that this kind of society was already predicted when we faced the automation driving. When I participated in several years ago about the automation driving in San Francisco, I was really astonished. That notion, that concept can really rebuild our government's benefit cost analysis about transportation facilities. The benefit cost analysis regard the transportation time as a garbage time. Therefore, the infrastructure, how much the transportation infrastructure saves the time is the value of the infrastructure, right? The problem is, with automation driving, the transportation time is transformed into the working time. How can we measure the benefit of the new infrastructure? And one delegation from United States government said that we need to rebuild. We need to replace the theory for construction, benefit cost analysis. Based on traditional or conventional methodology, we don't need to build more the conventional road or railroad. That was a shock. That was a shock. And COVID-19 is just accelerate the era where or when human labor is replaced by automation. The next target is then what will be our job? Then do I have to maintain content collaboration to the face the new society in the future? COVID-19 just nothing but the bigger challenging. But anyway, that is one of the problem that human race should solve in any time, right? And also we have a very cutting edge technologies facing the viruses. I'm seeing the watch and probably I can let the next presenter start the presentation. And also the presentation is very similar to the Hong Kong's the presentation is a strategy for the Korean government. Therefore, we can delay the overall discussion in a panel discussion time. Then please take the floor. The Korean presenter. He's let me introduce his name and title. He is Mr. Song Po-myung, the Director of Safety Planning Department from Korean Railroad Corporation, and his title is Strategies Against COVID-19 in Korea. Please take the floor and give him a big applause.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's my great pleasure to meet you all via online. I am Po-myung Song, Director of Safety Planning Department at Korea Railway. Due to COVID-19, there has been less travel between countries and regions, but the distance between customers and staff, in other words, the distance between railways between different countries, and our efforts have been shortened, and COVID-19 has become a wake-up call for us to improve safety further. The number of confirmed cases and the government efforts have been varied depending on the confirmed cases has decided the level of government response to COVID-19. And there has been limitation for use of trains and railway to confirmed cases. And the in-person procedures and processes have to be replaced by contactless processes. It has an impact on finance of a company, and it has caused some managerial challenges. There could be some differences between countries, but countries around the world are facing common challenges due to COVID-19. So I'd like to introduce you Korea's strategies against COVID-19 and what it has experienced while it is trying to prevent and control COVID-19 and the government's role in the process. This is the content of my presentation. I'm going to begin with introduction of Korea Railway and briefly tell you about the Korean government's policy response to COVID-19 and Korea's strategies against COVID-19 and finish with Korea's current operation and future plan. Let me introduce you how Korea Railway began. Korea Railway has been playing one of the most pivotal roles in national industrial development for the past 120 years, making important milestone in Korean history. Korea Railway was born with the launch of National Railway Office in 1894. Since then, Seoul Metropolitan Railway has begun its operation, followed by operation of local trains. In the 2000, KTX was launched, introducing high-speed rail service. And since its membership of the OSJD in 2018, Korea has been actively communicating with the global railway community. Korea Railway is responsible for railway transportation and maintenance in doing business development projects. It is in charge of operation of mainline railway and metros and freight trains. It performs maintenance and repair of rolling stocks and railway facilities. Asset development and other business involving railway transportation and international railway is one of the important business of Korail. Here, I'd like to talk about how the Korean government is responding to COVID-19. Korea's response to COVID-19 can be summed up in 3 T's: test, tracing, and treatment. The government is providing drive-through testing in a larger scale and tracing rapidly when there is a confirmed case, and share information on the tracing results with the public. And the government provides confirmed cases with the treatment. Testing, tracing, and treatment are the key words of Korea's response to COVID-19. Korea's response to COVID-19 is in line with the government's 3T strategy. Its key strategies are safe and secure transport, prevention of spread of COVID-19, and support for the government's prevention and control measures. Under the strategies, Korail developed 6 tasks. Let me go into detail of each strategy. To ensure safe and secure transport, Korail places an importance in joint quarantine with the government. In January 2002, when the first case of COVID-19 was confirmed in Korea, Korail created a task force for emergency prevention and control and working with the central and local governments to carry out joint quarantine. KCDC, which is the government control office, and local governments send us information on confirmed cases. Then we share with them the confirmed cases history of train riding, who was on the same train with them, and which source they used in stations. We provide our full support for the government's 3T strategies. And Korea provides transportation service for all new arrivals to the country, including returning Koreans and foreign nationals. The picture on the slide shows a quarantine flow for all arrivals to Korea, and the one in red is what Korea is responsible for. All arrivals to Korea are required to go through basic quarantine process and to go to a triage center for the COVID-19 test and then to self-quarantine for the following 2 weeks. For those arrivals who don't have private transport means, Korail is providing airport shuttle buses and KTX cars designated to them. By using Korail's designated transport, they can move to triage centers at key stations. This slide shows how the new arrivals travel to their destination by using railway. The inbound travelers take a designated airport shuttle to Gwangmyeong Station, where they ride a designated KTX car to their destination. As of today, about 200,000 new arrivals to Korea have used those designated transport. Once they arrived at their station, they have their temperature checked through a thermal camera to see if they have a fever and get tested for COVID-19 in a triage center. Then they use a transportation provided by a local government to get to their home and self-quarantine for 2 weeks. Foreign nationals who don't have a place for self-quarantine in Korea, they can stay in temporary accommodation the Korean government provides.
Next is our disinfection activities at the station. The station is a place frequented by many people, so it is important to take preventive disinfection measures. Waiting rooms, ticket windows, escalators, and gateways where there are many people passing by. We conducted cleaning and sanitation works on the passageways and on the area surfaces that are frequently touched by people more than twice a day. And we installed a glass partition in the ticket office window to prevent employees from getting COVID-19 infection. Next is our anti-COVID-19 measures in trains. On average, we sanitize the trains 5 times a day, and as for general trains and metros, the 11,200 carriages undergo sanitization immediately after every trip, and ventilation is done 14 times to 17 times per hour. And in this way, we are helping the users of the railway transportation relieved and have trust in their use of the railway. In order to prevent the spread of COVID-19, we are taking the leading role in social distancing and many other efforts. Depending on the level of COVID-19 spread, we arrange only the window seats, for example, so that we can have social distancing within the carriage, and we prohibit the users or passengers from having food or eating food, and we make it mandatory for all users to wear masks. And during weekend, we adjusted part of the train operating schedule to prevent the spread of the virus across the community. And in order to address the anxiety among people regarding COVID-19, we are playing an important role. For example, the COVID-19 prevention rules announced by the government are shared through the onboard broadcasting, mobile devices, and posters at the stations. And we help the people alleviate their fear of COVID-19 by carrying out a campaign which says we can overcome COVID-19 together with Korea Railway. As such, so far, we have no case of COVID-19 infection among the passengers who use Korea. We are also making efforts to prevent infection among our internal employees. We provided all employees with masks and have them wear the masks, and we check the body temperature twice a day. Also, we recommend employees to work from home. We diversified office hours, and we allocated hours for using office criteria into different slots. And we significantly reduced face-to-face meetings. Also, collective offline trainings or offline seminars were canceled. Next is the Korean government's COVID-19 prevention activities, our support for the government's COVID-19 prevention activities. Actually, we offered free rides to the medical staff who are going towards the country's worst hit regions, and we also provided Co-Rail's training center as temporary quarantine accommodation center for overseas arrivals to self-quarantine. And when supply of masks was not stable, we provided spaces for mask sales in the railway stations for free. Lastly, I would like to explain about our current operational status and future plans. As of January 28, 2020, COVID-19 broke out. Since then, the number of railway passengers significantly decreased, and our operating revenue of 2020 decreased by 37.2% compared to that of 2019, and we still are experiencing the impact of COVID-19. Especially in 2021, our revenue slightly increased compared to last year, but the revenue started to decline again due to the fourth wave of the pandemic. Despite such losses in operating revenue, we are proactively participating in the efforts to overcome the national crisis caused by COVID-19. For example, we have cut the sales commission we receive from the rail station shops by 20%, and we also exempted travel agencies, small and medium-sized travel agencies, from the payment of sales commissions. We also provided discount on railway transport fares to logistics companies, and we are supporting small-sized merchants and businesses to be alleviated of their burden. In response to the COVID-19 and in our preparation to post-COVID era, we will help making the Korean economy more vigorous. For example, we will increase our marketing activities to restore the demand for travel and activate the domestic economy. In cooperation with the Korean government, we also plan to launch tour packages. And in order to address the unemployment issues, Co-Rail has recruited the largest number of new employees among public corporations in Korea. As such, we will try to create more jobs. Including Korea, some countries are preparing for the era where they live with COVID-19. In the case of Korea, the Korean government is also deliberating on the level of anti-COVID-19 measures in our response to the era where we have to live with COVID-19. I hope that our presentation will be helpful for your preparation for a new era. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Hong Kong is very similar to Hong Kong's presentation. There is a slight difference, and right now, including all the remarks previously, we will further develop our discussion through the panel discussion. Now we will introduce our prominent panel members. Please take a seat. Yeah. Right. And one by one, I will introduce our panel member. The first panel is Mr. Lee Min-sung. Please take a seat. Lee Min-sung. And the second person is Shin Seok-gyun from Ricardo Rails, the representative of Korea and Japan. And the third panel is third panel is Kwak Sang-rok, professor from Korea National University of Transportation. Thank you very much for participation. Please give an applause again. I think we don't have enough time, right? How many minutes do we have? Okay. So I will give you for streamlining the procedure, right? I will give you some question, one question to each panel. Then the panel will freely express the opinions, right? The question number one is for Mr. Lee Min-sung, right? Because you are working for the Korea Railroad Corporation, and I want to listen from you about the brief. Your conception, your recognition about the difference between Hong Kong and Korea regarding the COVID-19 policies. And then, do you feel any necessary about more trade-offs between the safety issue regarding coronavirus and economic damage, economic issues? Because Korea also experienced certain quantity of economic damages. It is just a free opinion. We don't need to debate, right? And the second question is for Mr. Shin Seok-kyun from Ricardo Rail, and because you are the representative of the Korea and Japan, and I want to hear from you the brief meaning of the future reciprocal recognition of each nation's type of approval, like a TSI, and then your just a subjective opinion about Korea's readiness for participating the TSI system. Yes, and the third question is for Professor Kwak Sang-ro, right? And because I'm just wondering the root causes of the railway accident show different behavior per different victims. For example, that can be, I don't know, employee or just the passengers or some facility damage, right? And if so, can we adjust our regulation policies based on the priority of the damage per root causes? It is very important because we are right now going through about trade-offs, safety regulation, sticking to the safety regulation, or facilitating the economic flow or activity or some kind of opportunity facing very grand crisis like COVID-19. So we cannot, the government sector cannot maintain the situation where there is no accident or no infection. The no infection means just shut down the railroad, right? Therefore, I want to hear some academic inspection about this kind of trade-offs. So please start, Mr. Lee Min-sung, about the first question, and then we can go to the next question and the third question. Please take the floor.
예, 안녕하십니까?
Hello, I am from Korea. I am in general charge of operating stations. First of all, I listened very well to the presentation from Hong Kong. And from Korea, Mr. Song made a presentation. If I compare the two presentations, the Hong Kong's regulatory institution has had a very good case examples of how they manage and cooperate with various operating institutions. And presentation from Korea was focusing on how we have responded to COVID-19, centered around actual case examples from the perspective of operating institution of railway. Korea was also hit hard by COVID-19, And for such a long time, we had to respond to the challenges caused by COVID-19. And in my opinion,
그동안 지난 코로나의 대응 기간에서
while we were responding to COVID-19, although we suffered some challenges and difficulties, the passengers of Korea, they faithfully abided by the rule of wearing masks, sanitizing their hands. So the Korean passengers were very much cooperative. And so far, we had no single infection of COVID-19 among the passengers who use the Korail. So we had zero infection among the Korean railway passengers. And we also adjusted the intensity of anti-epidemic measures depending on the level of COVID-19 spread. But I think that we were able to achieve such a result because thanks to the efforts to sanitize the trains and thanks to the efforts of the passengers as well. When Korean people use the railway, so railway in Korea is also part of the public service, and I think we faithfully conducted our roles, and we conducted PR activities and campaigns towards the Korean people so that they can have trust in the safety of railway mobility. And when we had SARS or MERS in the past, we had similar experience, and we are now experiencing a new infectious disease of COVID-19. Today, especially from Hong Kong, they showed us very good examples of how they're responding to COVID-19 and how they're preventing the spread of the virus. And I hope that many countries and operating institutions in various countries around the world need to share each other's experience and case examples in a more in-depth manner so that we can, for example, in the future, create some manuals to respond to such challenges.
Thank you very much for your explanation and comment. And the next turn is to the Mr. Shin Seok-gyun. Please take the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello, I'm Seok-gyun Shin from Ricardo Rail. I'd like to congratulate you on the opening of IRC 2021. It is my great pleasure that Ricardo has been a sponsor of IRC 2021. And regarding time approval,
so content was very interesting because KRRI has signed MLA already, but in Europe, they have a legal system where they re-evaluate and verify the certification. And KRRI made very good proactive efforts for example, signing a mutual agreement with the other countries. And I think the KRRI took future-oriented measures, which was very excellent. And if I ask a question to KRRI, LTE, 5G, or other IoT technologies are being rapidly developed in Korea, and Korea is one of the leaders in these technology areas. If we apply these advanced technologies, actually Korea has applied these advanced technologies to railway, and Korea is recognized as one of the technology powerhouses in the world. So we can apply AI or other advanced technologies, including hypertube, into railway sector. And for certification of such advanced technologies, we may need to have international cooperation with other countries across the world. Do you have any plan?
Probably we finish the
Do you have any?
panel session, then you will answer.
I am Kwak Sang-ro.
From Korea National University of Transportation. Answering to the question from the chair, I'd like to say first, the budget for railway safety in Korea quadrupled for the past few years because Korea wanted to introduce stronger safety regulations compared to those of Europe. And Korea has been regulating safety of a railway at the national level. One of the examples is the full installation of PSDs at stations. So the budget for safety of railway quadrupled, and as a result, railway accidents has been reduced by 80%. But the safety level has been stagnant for the past few years, despite these achievements. That is why some people are arguing we have to ease regulations, and some people are discussing actively what is causing railway accidents in most of the time. But it depends. The cause depends on the stations and the environment. So we are referring to International Railway Safety Act and standards, and the efforts to strengthen and improve safety regulations of railway in Korea is increasing. So we have to converge and integrate new technologies as well to ensure safety without spending too much on railway safety.
Thank you very
That's
much.
all.
Very clear explanation. Please take the floor, Dr. Shindoko, to your question.
And Mr. Shin Seok-kyu asked me a question. I'd like to answer the question. As for LTE, 5G, and IoT, and for other advanced technologies, we need safety evaluation and certification. And you want to know about our roadmap for such safety evaluation and certification. KRRI is the government-funded institution. We are working on advanced technology R&D, and we provide support for the development of railway industry sectors. If we have an environment like EU where we can facilitate the development of advanced railway technologies, it will be possible to lead the safety evaluation and certification of such advanced technologies. But for now, we are lack of the facilities or equipment required to do that. So in order to verify the safety of such advanced railway technologies, we need to establish further systems, and such system improvement or development to ensure safety evaluation of advanced technologies are reflected in our long-term plan. So I'd like to ask for your continued interest and support in our institution's activities.
Answers. And I'm wondering if there are any other questions or comments on any other materials or my comments. Okay, please take the floor.
I have a question for France, EPSF. As you may well know, Asian countries are speaking different countries, and France is speaking French, and other European countries are speaking their own languages. So my question is, when there is an emergency at cross-border areas, you should make an emergency announcement. But in which language are you making an emergency announcement? Do you make an emergency announcement in French only or in multiple languages? Another question is, you need to have fire extinguishers or recovery equipment at cross-border areas in case an emergency happens. So where do you install fire extinguishers or recovery equipment in cross-border areas?
To the question?
In France only or in both countries of the border, both sides of the border?
Can you hear me, right?
I can hear you.
Yes. That's a very good question. I'm gonna answer about the language. We don't have a specific regime for dangerous moment, but we have EU regulation and national rules regarding the language in cross-border areas. To try to summarize the topic, you have a regulation regarding the language between the driver and the what we call in English circulation agent. This is a person who is working for the IM, who is managing the circulation and who is dealing with all situations, normal situation and safety situation. And we have standards of languages between the driver and the IM. We use the European way to define the level of language, and the driver need to speak at least a level what we call B1. It's a certain level of language of the IM language. I will give you a very quick example. I have a train coming from Spain to France, for instance. If the IM of France defines the language as a French language, the Spanish driver need to speak all time a B1 level of French. But in some situation, Spain is a good example, but we have as well the Italian example. The IM can settle two language. He can have French speakers and Spanish speakers. It depends of each cross-border section. But the main rule you have to see if a train coming from outside France need drivers with B1 level of language in French. So it shouldn't be an issue for a normal situation and for non-scheduled situation. I hope I answer your question. And your second part of the question was about any risk we can have at the border. Regarding fire risk and any other risk, this is something defined by each member state by very specific national rules, and it's done under the control of each state. But the rules for the language will be the same. And you have to know that when there is a very strong problem, we still have English as well. But English will be an informal language in this case. The formal language will be the language defined by the infrastructure manager. I hope I answer your question.
Is it good for you, Professor? Okay, thank you very much. And I hope there will not be any question or comment because I'm really pressed to finish this section right now, even though. Do you have one question? Okay, please take the floor shortly.
Short question to Hong Kong. You mentioned that crisis can also turn into opportunity through your presentation. One of the challenges you experienced was the problems with the supply chain, and there may have been delay in your railway project because of the supply chain problems. And you had those risks in your railway projects, and in order to minimize the risks in your railway projects, what kind of measures did you take? What kind of measures did you take to immediately solve the challenges in your project?
We will closely communicate with the railway operators to request them to source alternative supplies, because some of the spare part may be from European. Then we will ask them to source other alternative supply in mainland or close to Hong Kong, so that in case there was a prolonged delivery of spare part from overseas, they can get another supply from the alternative suppliers.
Answer is a little bit simple, but are you okay with that? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on the presentation? But I would like to emphasize this is a time to. I'm happily pronounced. The final is ending, the ending of this section. And thank you for all efforts and on the presentation and question and comment and explanation to participants and the panel and other audience, including online audience. Thank you very much. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, and especially thanks chairperson for your hard work. 네, 고맙습니다. 이렇게 해서 오늘 마지막 세션 함께 하셨습니다. 굉장히 열띤.
With this, we would like to conclude the last session. Please give all of them a big round of applause.
네, 고맙습니다.
Thank you.
세션 진행에 함께 해주신 우리 조성균 과장님.
Thank you, Mr. Zhou, and all presenters.
임해주신 모든 분들께.
Thank you very much for your participation, and thank you, viewers, for being here with us online. With this, we'd like to wrap up all presentations and discussion sessions for the 31st IRSC. Thank you very much for your contribution to this conference for the last 3 days. I would like to sincerely thank all the presenters and discussants. We are going to have a special session where we're going to read the Seoul Declaration. Please stay with us. Then, in terms of railway safety, the railway safety policy principles are reflected in Seoul Declaration. We're going to read the Seoul Declaration. I will ask Mr. Im Jong-il, the Director General for Railway Policy at MOLET, to read this declaration. Please welcome me with a big round of applause.
We, core group members of International Railway Safety Council, including government institutions, railway operators, research institutions, and other relevant organizations, participated in the 31st IRSC conference held from 12th to 14th October 2021 in Republic of Korea. We, recognizing that the enhancement of railway safety and the innovation and technology that enable such enhancement protect the property and lives of people and have the potential to contribute significantly to the development of regions and national territories as well as mutual prosperity between countries. Proclaim this declaration as a testament to our collective commitment to enhance railway safety. 1. We acknowledge that the ultimate goal of railway safety is to protect railway workers and passengers. Sharing this philosophy, we recognize the need to enhance the railway's safety management capability, develop technologies to ensure safety of rail workers and passengers, and improve methods for emergency response. Furthermore, recognizing that continuous, systematic, and specialized education for railway workers is essential for effective implementation of advanced safety systems, individual efforts of countries and cooperative efforts between countries will be made to advance that recognition. Second, we acknowledge that the application of AI, the Internet of Things, big data, and other Industrial 4.0 technologies provide innovative means to enhance railway safety and recognize the need to cooperate in utilizing such applications for the development of real-time, data-driven accident prevention safety systems, intelligent control system minimizing human error, and IoT-based maintenance and repair systems for railway facilities, vehicles, and equipment. This cooperation needs a shared doctrine for the proper use of these technologies. In particular, their understanding, their ease of verification by competent authorities, and their control by users. Third, we recognize that the sustainability and enhancement of railway safety cannot be achieved without appropriate systems, policies, and positive safety culture. Furthermore, we recognize that the safety management scheme of railway operators and the railway safety policy of government entities are essential drivers in creating a positive safety culture. In this respect, we will continue to promote the development of railway policies and systems that lead to sustainable improvement of railway safety. Such policies and systems include safety management systems based on risk-informed approaches, risk management system to mitigate against potential accidents.
4. Recognizing that the railway industry includes the cross-border transportation of freight and passengers via intercontinental railways, we acknowledge the need for technological exchange and policy cooperation in areas such as the development of standards for interoperability and internationalization of safety certifications. Furthermore, we recognize that a fair and strict but enterprise-friendly and efficient approval system plays a significant role in nurturing the railway industry to be a key industry that serves the entire nation. 5. We recognize that the need to share knowledge and experience on infectious disease prevention and response policies and measures to ensure the health and safety of railway passengers and workers in pandemic situations, such as COVID-19 pandemic. Also, we are aware that the core value of railway policies, including safety, lies in raising communal, economic, and cultural quality of life despite the pandemic. 6. We recognize the importance of IRSC 2021 Seoul Declaration as it is the first testament to our collective commitment to enhance railway safety. In the future, we will continue to cooperate with each other to further expand the commitment in this declaration as appropriate. We look forward to seeing each other at the 32nd IRSC conference in 2022.
네, 뜨거운 박수 쳐주시면
Please give him a big round of applause.
네, 철도 안전선언문 이렇게 또 힘차게
Seoul Declaration on Railway Safety. Thank you very much for reading the declaration.
정책관님께서 직접 낭독을
Mr. Im Jong-il from MOLIT read the declaration himself. Please remember the content of Seoul Declaration. And we have prepared a commemorative photo-taking session. Distinguished guests on site and our core group members who are here with us online are going to take a photo all together. So please be prepared to take the commemorative photo. I would like to ask all core group members online to be prepared to take a photo. And first of all, the distinguished guests who are here on site in Korea will come to the stage for the commemoration. Distinguished guests and participants, we took the commemorative photo. And we will take a short break, and from 7:15 p.m. Korean time, we're going to have the closing ceremony.
자, 그리고 이 휴식 시간 중에는요.
During break time,
지난 이틀간 여러분들이 함께한 그 내용
we will show you the snap images of how you participated in the conference for the last 2 to 3 days. We'll see you again at 7:15 p.m. Korean time.
잠시 후에 다시 뵙도록 할게요.
I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start the closing ceremony of IRSC 2021 at 7:15. So I'd like to kindly ask you to enter the hall and be seated. I'll also ask you to turn your cell phone into a vibration mode and turn it off. And to prevent the spread of COVID-19, please make sure you comply with the prevention and control measures, and please leave the translation receiver at the table. Please tune to channel 1 for translation into Korean and channel number 2 for translation into English. Thank you. Now we are going to begin the closing ceremony of IRSC 2021. Thank you so much for your hard work for these 3 days. The closing ceremony will begin with an IRSC core group meeting report, followed by presentation by the next host on a plan for the next IRSC, and finished with closing speeches. Just for your information. Regarding IRSC core group meetings report, core group meeting is held at the site of the annual IRSC conference and attended by 26 key organizations of the 16 member countries. This year, the meeting was held last night from 8 to 10. And Secretary of the IRSC, Kirby Jang, will tell us about the report via online.
Okay, thank you for that kind introduction. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. Greetings to everyone from Toronto, Canada. As the core group secretary, it's my privilege to deliver the core group report at this IRSC conference. For me, this is a great opportunity to address my IRSC colleagues and friends from all over the world. To start, I want to congratulate the IRSC 2021 hosts, the Korea Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, and Transport, and also the Korea Railroad Research Institute, along with their co-hosts and sponsors for putting on a wonderful event. It has been a well-organized and well-attended event, and this event continues in the IRSC tradition of excellence through information sharing, cooperation, and networking, albeit from virtual meetings. Despite the many challenges due to the COVID pandemic over the past year, I think everyone will agree that this IRSC event has been successfully delivered. When I think back to about a year ago, when many of us were attending the IRSC webinars hosted by our UK colleagues, we believed that the pandemic situation would soon be resolved. We had the expectation of returning to normal soon, and certainly we believed that we'd be able to re-engage with colleagues as part of an in-person event at this year's IRSC conference. But earlier this year, after continued monitoring of the COVID situation throughout the world, the Korea Organizing Committee had to make the very difficult decision to reconsider whether an in-person event was the right approach for ensuring a safe and successful IRSC conference. After consulting with core group, it was unanimously agreed that IRSC 2021 would be delivered as a virtual conference. But deciding on using the virtual format for the IRSC was an initial setback. However, it was quickly realized that a great opportunity was available. One of the advantages of a virtual event that we learned from last year's IRSC webinars is that this format provides the opportunity to reach more people, including people who had not normally attended IRSC events in the past. In fact, I understand that many participants at this year's conference are attending IRSC for the first time. This is great news, as we have the opportunity to build on the IRSC event, to build the IRSC family, and to be even more successful in the future. So to all the first-time participants here today, on behalf of the core group and the IRSC 2021 organizing committee, I want to thank you for your interest and participation at this year's IRSC, and I hope you'll be able to join us at our future events. We have so many first-time attendees here today. I'd like to take this opportunity to talk a little about IRSC, our history, our traditions, and our charter. Within the railway industry, the IRSC event provides a unique opportunity each year for railway professionals to actively engage in discussion on safety issues that are important to each of us, issues that some of us are facing on a daily basis. The first IRSC meeting was held in 1990 as a result of a joint initiative involving the Japan Railway East Management and the Japan Railway East Union. Prior to that meeting, they had been discussing safety issues relating to their company and decided to look for new perspectives on safety from other experts globally. That initial meeting in 1990 was a great success, and since then, IRSC has developed into an international annual meeting. Today, IRSC is a forum that brings together railway safety professionals from around the globe to exchange information and to provide experiences and lessons for improving railway safety. Representing various countries throughout the world, organizations that regularly attend and support IRSC include railway operating companies, infrastructure owners, railway industry associations, trade unions, accident investigation agencies, and railway safety regulatory authorities. This diverse mix of railway safety experts has led to many thought-provoking and challenging ideas, as well as contributing to an in-depth understanding of a range of rail safety problems. As such, the IRSC has made and will continue to make significant contributions to the ongoing improvement of railway safety management and performance around the world. At this year's IRSC, an important event occurred in the continuous evolution of the IRSC legacy, one that will continue to define the IRSC concept into the future. What I'm referring to is the Seoul Joint Declaration, which was just introduced this year. The concept of a joint declaration for IRSC was developed and proposed by the Korea Organizing Committee. The joint declaration was unanimously endorsed by the core group as a visible and proactive means to emphasize the collective commitment of our members towards enhancing railway safety. I'm proud to say that the joint declaration further extends the IRSC spirit of sharing knowledge through cooperation and collaboration beyond what has already been stated in the IRSC Charter. As such, you have witnessed the start of what I believe will become a new IRSC tradition. This new tradition will be similar to the IRSC triangle that is integrated into the logo of each IRSC host. I think we can all agree that our Korea host has designed a beautiful logo for IRSC that uniquely blends Korean cultural symbols into the logo. In fact, the IRC triangle symbolizes how people and organizations from all sectors of the railway community work together towards the global common goal of safety. Combined with the IRC triangle, the joint declaration will continue to define our collective commitment towards enhanced railway safety. Now, on to a few highlights from our core group meeting that was held yesterday evening. We had a very productive meeting. We reviewed and discussed various decisions over the past year. We reviewed and discussed lessons learned and opportunities for improving the IRC meetings. We reviewed options and planned for future IRC meetings. In fact, shortly, you will hear about our exciting plans for next year's IRC meeting, a meeting that we fully expect will be conducted in person. I'm also happy to say that our IRC core group family continues to grow. At last year's meeting, we added a new member to core group. You may be aware that the National Railway Administration of China joined core group last year. With NRA's recent and extensive experience with high-speed rail, along with their commitment to safety, this is a fantastic opportunity for ongoing collaboration and discussions on safety performance and best practices. At this year's meeting, we have been and are continuing to review the application from another prominent railway organization to join core group. I think it's certainly a testament to our success that organizations are showing active interest to join core group. As a final item for my core group report, I want to share with you a few highlights and numbers from IRSC 2021. I guess these numbers are as of yesterday, but the number of participants, 345. That's fantastic. It shows a wide reach of IRSC across the railway community. The number of countries represented, 20. Certainly highlights the international collaboration and information sharing among countries. The number of organizations represented, 87. Again, highlights the diverse mix of knowledge and experience among the organizations. The number of speakers or presenters, 28. The number of web poster presenters, 10. All these presenters focused on the 4 primary conference themes of technology, safety culture, people, and networking. Very, very important issues that will expand upon the railway safety knowledge throughout our community. I think we can all agree that this has been a very successful IRSC meeting, despite the many challenges due to the virtual format. And with that, I'd like to close my core group report by congratulating the Korea hosts and organizing committee once again for a job well done. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for sharing your report. 고맙습니다. 이렇게 해서 어제 있었던 이 코어 그룹의
So, Mr. Kirby Jung shared with us the discussion of core group yesterday. Through IRSC, we shared abundant knowledge and information and promoted cooperation with each other. And although we were faced with a lot of challenges, we spent a very meaningful time during the IRSC. For the closing ceremony, core group members have shown great interest and support, and also we have distinguished guests.
Let me introduce you distinguished guests at the site. Please give them a big round of applause when I call their name. When you hear your name, please just stand from your seat and look at the camera. First, we have Director General for Railway Safety and Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, Jong-il Im, with us. And we also have Director of Railway Traffic Safety Division at the Ministry, Song-gyun Jo, here with us. Vice President of the KRRI, An-ho Lee, is here with us. Thank you very much. Chief of Railroad Safety Research Division at the KRRI, Chanu Lee, is here with us.
네, 계속해서 소개 이어가도록
And
하겠습니다. 네, 다음은요. 리카르도 레일의 신성
Managing Director for Korea and Japan at Ricardo Rail, Seokgyun Shin, is here with us.
네, 그리고 한국교통안전공단 이지욱 철도
We have head of the Railroad Safety Office at the Korea Transportation Safety Authority, Jiung Lee, with us,
국가철도공단
and Chief of Safety Planning of Korea National Railway, Young-ho Yoon, is here with us. We have many participants via online and here at the site, but let me apologize for not introducing every one of them due to time constraint. Once again, I'd like to thank you for your time.
네, 고맙습니다. 이렇게 온라인으로 지금 발표 내용을
Thank you.
함께 공유를 했습니다.
So we shared
회의 내용을
knowledge information through presentations as explained by Mr. Kirby Jung from Core Group. Thank you very much. Next is the very important session. We will listen to the presentation from the next IRSC host country. The presentation will be made by Mr. Bot Aku from ERA, the head of Safety and Operations Unit from ERA. Let's meet him through the screen.
So thank you, and thank you also Kirby for reminding us so clearly what the IRSC is all about. And hello to all participants from a cloudy France where it's lunchtime now. I'm happy to announce that we plan to organize the 32nd IRSC conference next year as an in-person event again. We hope so. The 2020 International Railway Safety Council will be organized by the European Union Agency for Railways in close collaboration with ADIF, the Spanish Infrastructure Manager, and AESF, the Spanish National Safety Authority, in the nice location of Seville in the south of Spain. The event is scheduled to take place in the third week of October next year, so please all book that week. The venue for the event will be the Melia Hotel that is situated in the old city center and that we believe has all the necessary equipment and facilities to make this a great event up to the standards of previous conferences. For the welcoming dinner, the Reales Alcazares has been chosen. This venue is probably the oldest royal palace that is still being used as such in Europe. The palace was built in the 14th century in a characteristic Arabic style and forms part of the world heritage. The gala dinner is planned to take place on the España Square. This is a nice location with a central square in the form of a half circle and a fountain that is connected to the surrounding buildings through 4 bridges. And it has been used as a filming location for several movies, including Lawrence of Arabia and Star Wars Attack of the Clones. We've made an agreement with those that they will not attack us again, so I'm sure it will be an ideal setting to discuss safety matters in a pleasant and relaxed way. All these venues are situated in the center of the city of Seville that has much more remarkable and amazing historic attractions to visit and wander at. With the teams that have been chosen for the event, we are aiming at collecting real examples of implementing new ideas in safety management. Safety culture and safety performance. There we are looking forward to hear concrete experience with safety culture programs and how they have helped to improve performance. In the topic on lessons learned from organizational incidents and accidents, we would like to explore how to investigate the organizational aspects of incidents and accidents, looking at the system and not only at the event, and learn what lessons can be made and how a sustainable change can be introduced. We would also like to look at safety data and systems and digitalization. This has already been introduced by several speakers this year. But we would like to explore how we can make best use of the increasing digitalization of the railway system to move from a reactive towards a much more proactive safety management. And in the last topic, we would like to hear proposals on how to improve safety management and positioning it as a rail safety as a global and integrated value. Both the technical visit and possible partner program are still under construction, but I'm convinced that the Spanish railways, who I think will be celebrating their the 30th year of high speed next year, and Spain in general, have a lot to offer to build an attractive program. Furthermore, we are reflecting on the possibility to offer trainings and workshops on the last 2 days of the conference. So we're at the end of this short teaser for next year's conference, and on behalf of ADIF, AESF, and the Union Agency for Railways, I can say that we're really looking forward to meet you all in Spain next year. Thank you.
네, 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
Please give him a big round of applause.
네, 이렇게 바트아쿠 안전 및 운영 부장님께서
Mr. Bat Aku from ERA made a presentation. Thank you very much.
순서에 따라서 오늘 이 행사의 주관 기관인 국토교통부의 폐배사가
Now we're going to listen to the closing remarks from the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport from Mr. Im Jong-il, the Director General for Railway Policy.
앞으로 보시도록 하겠습니다.
Please welcome him with a big round of applause. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Director General for Railway Safety Policy and Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, Jong-il Lim. It's my great pleasure to conclude IRSC 2021 with a success. There have been many challenges for this event to happen due to the global COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to core group of IRSC and attendees of IRSC 2021 for expressing their interest and enthusiasm and joining us at this event. My special thanks go to President of the KRRI, Seok-yun Han, and members of the organizing committee for their hard work to make this event a success. I also thank co-hosts of the event, Korail, Korean National Railway, and Korean Railway Association for their efforts. I'd like to sincerely thank all speakers and discussion panelists who shared their insight and made suggestions for effective policy making and improvement in railway in each session of the conference. IRC 2021 provided a venue where we discussed railway safety management and convergence of new technologies, safety culture, workers' safety, and international cooperation. The conference invited global railway safety professionals and policymakers from different regions of the world to discuss 21 topics and release 5 web posters. And it was attended by online viewers as well as participants at the venue who were actively engaged in discussions to share ideas and deal with new challenges facing railway safety. It was a wonderful time. As you may well know, in the 20th century, railway enjoyed its prime time, which was possible thanks to advanced railway technology that railway workers researched and developed. I believe we've worked hard to make railway more efficient and greener and make it a significant contributor to local economy. The result is that railway has become the most popular and convenient transportation. As important as efficiency and convenience of a railway is a railway safety, there is no doubt about it. In this respect, it is important to note that IRC 2021 contributed to enhancing global cooperation for railway safety. The conference produced valuable policy suggestions and ideas for technological innovation and customer-oriented services. I believe the lessons we learned for 3 days will help take railway technology and international railway safety to the next level. Especially for cooperation and technical exchange in a wide range of railway activities such as safety assessment method, safety culture, safety management system, accident investigations, and conformity assessment. Korea's Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport and ERA work together, and we also had a joint declaration produced by IRSC 2021. It was a wonderful outcome. I believe the lessons we learned from IRSC 2021 will contribute to reducing global railway accidents to zero, and I hope we continue our cooperation to make railway more reliable public transportation. In 2021, ERA will host IRSC 2022. I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much for your hard work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your closing remarks. Mr. Im Jong-il gave you the words of thanks and he thanked you for all your support. Railway is the mobility that is loved by many people across the world, including myself. I hope that the railway sector will become a sector that is even more preferred by people across the world. Thank you very much for your closing remarks. I would like to invite another person from the organizer, Mr. Lee An-ho, the Vice President of Korea Railroad Research Institute, will give you a closing remark. Please welcome him with a big round of applause. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Lee An-ho, the Vice President of Korea Railroad Research Institute. First of all, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the head of the 31st IRSC Organizing Committee, Mr. Im Jong-il, the Director General for Railway Policy from the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, Mr. Kabi Jang, the Secretary General of the IRSC, and Mr. Bat Aku, the Head of Safety and Operations Unit from ERA, for their presence online under COVID-19. My deepest gratitude also goes to the stakeholders from 26 core institutions from 16 countries and railway safety experts. Thank you very much for all your contribution to this conference. The International Railway Safety Council is a world-renowned conference where we discuss the improvement and development of global railway safety technologies and share experience and knowledge in railway safety with each other. Under the COVID-19 pandemic, safety in the use of railway is the foremost important item, and it is significantly meaningful for Korea to host this conference as a country that has been successfully overcoming the COVID-19. For 3 days from October 12th, under the theme of Railway Safety and New Challenges, we have proceeded with 21 presentations and 5 web poster presentations, as well as discussions in the 4 areas of railway safety management and convergence of new technologies, safety culture, worker safety, and international cooperation. More specifically, in the session dealing with railway safety management and convergence of new technologies, we had presentations and discussion on digital re-engineering of railway safety, risk management, and smart railway maintenance strategies. In the session dealing with railway safety culture, we shared each other's experience and plan for collaboration between regulatory institutions and operating institutions, governance of safety environment, and ways to boost safety culture. In the session dealing with worker safety, we shared knowledge on integrated safety management based on human and organizational factors, risk assessment of casualty accidents, and smart safety management at stations. In the last session under the topic of international cooperation, we discussed collaboration among railway safety regulatory institutions, international cooperation on technical standards, and our strategies to respond to COVID-19. I sincerely appreciate the contribution from many presenters and experts to these sessions who shared their professional knowledge and experience of railway safety and helped us draw future-oriented safety measures based on convergence with new technologies. Especially today, we announced the Seoul Declaration on Railway Safety, which is IRIS's first declaration of railway safety policy principles that can be adopted across the globe. Through this declaration, we announced and shared the importance of railway safety technology development, higher awareness of safety culture, an integrated safety management system for railway workers and users, and international cooperation to foster the railway industry. I believe that the Seoul Declaration will serve as a platform to enable sustainable improvement of railway safety throughout the world. Korean railway technologies have reached a global level in terms of high-speed railway and urban metro, and we have made continuous improvement at the level of an advanced country in the railway safety sector. In line with the Korean government's 2050 carbon neutrality plan, railway industry is expected to grow as green mobility. I believe that through this IRSC conference, Korea had an excellent opportunity to share its railway safety sector's achievements with the international community and to perform a leading role in the development of global railway safety technology. Although the global COVID-19 pandemic has forced us to hold this International Railway Safety Council online, the technologies and policies shared among the global railway safety experts will help us envision a new future for the railway mobility. Railway technology is evolving in a faster and more convenient way. As a mobility used by people, railway mobility should ensure safety in the process of such technology evolution. This means that the roles and responsibilities of the IRSC will be expanded further, and KRRI is also committed to performing a bigger role. I would like to thank all participants of the 2021 IRSC and my deepest gratitude to all of you for your precious time. I wish all of you good health and happiness. I wish to meet with you again in the 32nd IRSC in Spain, hosted by ERA. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. From KRRI, the Deputy President, Mr. Iano, gave us the closing remarks. So I wish we could meet each other again in Spain next year. And he gave us very good comments. He mentioned that it was very meaningful for Korea to host this conference this year. And for the past 3 days, thank you very much for your cooperation and contribution to the conference. With this, we'd like to conclude the 31st IRSC. Thank you very much again for your active participation and your contribution to this event for the last 3 days. I would like to thank all participants online and offline from across the world. We have been sorry that we had to hold this conference online, but I wish we could meet each other in person next year. Thank you very much for your contribution for the last 3 days.
지금까지 저는 아나운서 김연진이었습니다.
So I am Kim Yeonjin, the announcer. And thank you very much for your support for this conference. And thank you very much for your participation.